So this is the part 2 video of our previous video 1.2, the slope of a tangent. I wanted to make a part 2 because you guys might see problems that are more complicated, more of a level 4 questions that are on the tests, but textbook doesn't really cover the hard integrated problems. So one of the problems that I think it's beneficial is determining the coordinates of the point on fx equals 2x squared minus 6, where the tangent is parallel to 8x minus 2y plus 1. So the first thing we're going to do is to identify what they're really asking for. So they're saying this function, the tangent of this function is parallel to this line. Also, there was a typo here, so this line equals to 0. Now, if it says their tangents are parallel, it basically means they have the same slope. So first thing first, we can identify what the slope of the line is. Okay, in order to find the slope of the line, I'm gonna find what y is. So we're just gonna look for y. So since this line equals to 0, I'm gonna put both 8x and 1 to the other side. So I'll end up with negative 2y equals negative 8x, negative 1. Now I'm going to divide everything by negative 2. So I'll be ending up with y equals 4x plus 1 over 2. So if you guys remember from the form y equals mx plus b, m is my slope. So therefore I found the slope of the line. It's 4. So I can say m equals 4. The second portion of this question is going to involve us finding out the slope of the tangent for this function now. So how are we going to do that? Because we don't have any x or y coordinates given, it's just a function. Well, we can use the slope of a tangent at x equals a, and this is the same formula that we use but only adapted to a point, like any point that is a. So I'm going to go ahead and adapt it to that. So I'm going to assume my x point is a and my x2 point would be a plus h. So therefore this point would be my y2, so a plus h, which is x2 integrated into the equation, and this is going to be my y1, which is the a point. So this is my original equation, so I'm going to start out by writing what y2 is, just to make it easier and we can simplify it before we even put it into the formula. So that would come out to 2, and then my x would be a plus h squared minus 6 a plus h. And when I simplify it even further, 2, so a plus h times a plus h, we're going to end up with a squared plus a plus h plus another a plus h, so we're going to come up to 2ah, and then plus h squared minus 6 times a is 6a, and then 6 times h is again negative 6h. So now I ended up with 2a squared plus 4ah plus 2h squared minus 6a minus 6h. This is my final y2 point. And then I'm going to go ahead and find what y1 is. So I'm just going to do the same thing, but I'm going to put a instead of a plus h now. So it's going to be 2a squared minus 6a. So I'm going to end up with 2a squared minus 6a. Now we can put these into the formulas. So I have limit as h approaches to 0, where I have 2a squared plus 4ah plus 2h squared minus 6a minus 6h minus 2a squared minus 6a over h. So now I'm going to simplify it even further. What I see is I have positive 2a squared here and then minus 2a squared, so we can cancel these out. And I see negative, and negative gives me positive 6a, and then I have a negative 6a over here. So I also can cancel these out. So what I have left with now is limit as h approaches to 0, 4ah plus 2h squared minus 6h over h. So what I see here, I can take h out from this portion. So I'm going to say limit as h approaches to 0, h 4a plus 2h minus 6 over h. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel the h's. So I left it out with limit as h approaches to 0, 4a plus 2h minus 6. So now, in order to find the actual solution, I'm going to go ahead and plug 0 for the h. So I'm left with 4a minus 6. If we look at the first portion of the question, we said this line and this equation will have the same slopes. So I found the slope of the first line and I found the slope in an equation for the fx. So if I equal these two, because they have the same slopes, I can actually find what a is. So that's going to be my third portion of the question. I had 4 from the first portion right over here, and I have 4a minus 6 from the other portion. So 4a minus 6. So I'm going to put this 6 to the other side as a positive. So I'll end up with 4a equals 10. And now I can divide both sides by 4. And I can say a equals 10 over 4. Or I can say 5 over 2, which will equal to 2.5. But these answers are sufficient. So what we actually found over here is the x-coordinate. But because it says determine the coordinates, so it wants both the x and y, we're going to go ahead and find what y is. So my x-coordinate is 5 over 2. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that x value right back into my original equation, which is 2x squared minus 6x. I'm going to find what y is. So we're going to go ahead and plug x value, which is a, back into here. So I'll end up with fx, which is y, equals 5 over 2 squared minus 6, 5 over 2. So 5 over 2 squared would be 25 over 4, because 5 squared is 25, 2 squared is 4, and then minus, I'm just going to go ahead and multiply 6 by 5 over 2. So when multiplying, don't forget you're only multiplying these two, so I'm going to end up with 30 over 2. And I'm going to go ahead and simplify it even further. So 2 times 25 is 50 over 4 minus 15. And then 50 over 4, from here I can simplify it even further and say I have 25 over 2 minus 15, and that will be my y-coordinate. Or I can, if they want exact number, I can say this is minus 2.5. Both of these should be fine, but minus 2.5 is easier. We found the coordinates to be 3 and negative 2.5. So another type of question that you guys might see is finding the point on fx equals 1 over 3 x cubed minus 10x minus 9 over x, where the tangent is horizontal. So the only thing we're seeing here that's different from any other problems that we solved is tangent being horizontal. So what does that mean? Let's say I have a function like this, a graph. Remember, this graph does not represent this, so I just put out an example just to explain what horizontal would be graphically. So if I have a point like this over here and I put a tangent right over here, it's going to be flat. So when it's flat, it means the slope is 0. And if you look at it, the tangent, if this is the tangent, it's horizontal. So whenever it says tangent is horizontal, that means the slope is 0. If you want to understand why the slope is 0, just think about the equation y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 that we used in order to find the slope. If I say this point is 4 and a negative 2, and then this point is 1 and a negative 2. I'm just going to use the y2 and y1 point in order for you to see why it's 0. So my y2 point is negative 2 minus my y1 point is already negative 2. So I'm going to end up with negative 2 plus 2, which is 0. So whatever your x points are, because the y points are the same, your slope is 0. The first portion I'm going to do is finding the tangent, slope of the tangent. So how do I do that? It doesn't, like the other questions, it doesn't give you any x values. So I'm going to go ahead and use this formula, and I'm going to say my x is a. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this formula into the equation. My fa plus h would be me plugging in a plus h for the x into the equation. So I will get 1 over 3 a plus h cubed minus 10 a plus h minus 9 a plus h. If I simplify it further, I'm going to get 1 over 3. A plus h cubed is just going to be a cubed. Let me zoom it in. A cubed plus 3a squared h plus 3ah squared plus h cubed. You guys can just expand it. I'm not going to do that in this video. It's just a plus h times a plus h times a plus h, or you can use the formula. So then I have negative 10a plus h, and then minus 9 over a plus h. After that, I'm going to go ahead and distribute every single thing. So I'm going to start with distributing 1 over 3. So I'll get 1 over 3a cubed plus 1 over 3 times 3 is just going to be 1. So I'm going to be left with a squared h. Same thing for this portion. So I'm going to end up with 1. So I have plus a h squared. And then I'm going to times it with the h cubed at the end. So I have 1 over 3 h cubed. Now I'm going to distribute the 10 inside here. So now I have minus 10a minus 10h. And then I'm going to leave minus 9 over a plus h. So that is my fa plus h. So I'm going to do the same thing for my fa point. My fa point is going to be 1 over 3 a cubed minus 10a minus 9 over a. So now I'm going to use the formula and just plug everything in. Limit as h approaches to 0 is going to be 1 over 3 a cubed plus a squared h plus a h squared plus 1 over 3 h cubed minus 10a minus 10h minus 9 over a plus h minus, and I'm going to put my fa, 1 over 3a cubed minus 10a and then minus 9 over a all over h. Now I need to simplify these stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and look at it and see anything that I can get rid of. I see a positive 1 over 3a cubed, and I see a negative 1 over 3a cubed here. I'm going to cancel these out. Other than that, I see a negative 10a here, and if you distribute this negative onto here, this is just going to be positive, so I'm going to cancel these out. And I see that I cannot cancel any of the things out. This is it. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. So I have limit as a approaches to 0, a squared h plus a h squared plus 1 over 3h cubed minus 10h minus 9 over a plus h, and then minus plus, sorry, we're distributing the minus again, plus 9 over a over h. When I look at the equation, I see that I can take out h from this portion, but I need to rearrange this portion in order to take h out, because in that form I cannot take h out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the other side. Minus 9 over a plus h plus 9 over a. I'm going to combine these two, so I can multiply this by a, and I can multiply this by a plus h, so I can put them together. So now I have minus 9a plus, so I just multiplied this by this, and I'm gonna multiply this by this. So now I have 9a plus h over a times a plus h. Now I'm gonna simplify it even further, so I have minus 9a plus 9a and then plus 9h over a squared plus ah. So I could have left it, but I'm just gonna do it as it is. And I see that I can cancel these out, so I am actually left with 9h over a squared plus ah. So I'm gonna put this right back into here, and I'm gonna replace this whole blue box with this. Limit as a approaches 0, a squared h plus ah squared plus 1 over 3h cubed minus 10h. Now I have plus 9h over a squared plus 8h over h. Now I can take h out, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So limited as h approaches to 0, I took h out, so I have h squared plus ah plus 1 over 3h cubed. Oh, sorry, h squared. We took h out. And then minus 10 plus 9 over a squared plus ah all over h. So now I can cancel these out. So now I have limit as 8 approaches to 0, a squared plus ah plus 1 over 3h squared minus 10 plus 9 over a squared plus ah. So now I'm going to plug in 0 for the h's. So as soon as I plug in 0, they are all 0. So this is cancelled out. I plugged in 0 for this. This cancelled out. I plug in 0 for this. This doesn't cancel out, but this portion is going to cancel out. So now I have a squared minus 10 plus 9 over a squared. And basically that's my answer for the tangent. So because the slope is 0 that we talked about, this equation should equal to 0 because we found the slope of the tangent. So I'm just going to go ahead and equal this to 0, and I'm going to find what a is, because if you look at the question again, it wants us to find the points. So it wants us to find the points. So I'm just going to come up with whatever x is, and then we'll find the points from there. I have a squared minus 10 plus 9 over a squared equaling to 0. So in order to get rid of this a squared right over here, I'm going to multiply both sides by a squared. So now I have a to the 4th minus 10 a squared plus 9, because these basically cancel out when you multiply it. And then 0 times anything is just going to be 0, so we're cool with that. So if you look at it, we ended up with a quadratic, but I don't want to deal with a to the 4th. So what I'm going to do, instead of trying to solve this out, I'm going to say any number m. I'm just coming up with with a letter, because I'm just going to replace it. So any number m is going to be equaled a squared. And when I say that, I can change this whole equation and be like, instead of putting a to the 4th, I'm going to put m squared. So because m is a squared, if I square it again, I'm going to end up with a to the 4th. So it's basically the same thing. I'm just replacing it in order to find what m is. So I have m squared minus 10m plus 9 equaling to 0. So from here, I can actually find what m is. m negative 9 and then m to the negative 1 equaling to 0. So now I found m's to be, and I take this out and equal it to 0, so m minus 9 equaling to 0. I have m equals 9, and when I take this out the same way, m negative 1 equals to 0. Now I have m equals to 1. But we don't want to find m. That was just a way to find what a is. I want a. So I'm going to replace whatever I came up with over here, and I'm going to replace m in order to find a. A squared being equal to 9, and I'm going to square root the both sides. So then I'm going to have a equals root 9, which is a equaling to plus or minus 9. So I came out with 2 solutions. For here, I'm going to do the same thing. So a squared equals to 1, and then I'm going to square root both sides. So a equals root 1. So I ended up with a being equal to plus or minus 1. So over here, I just made a mistake. I'm so sorry, but this is supposed to be 3 plus or minus 3. So I ended up with x being plus 3 and another x being negative 3. Here I have another x being 1, positive 1, and another x being negative 1. But it wants me to find the points, so I also need to find the y point for each of these points. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to plug in whatever x value I found into the original equation in order to find what y is. So this is my original equation, so I'm going to go ahead and do it for 2 of them, and then rest of them I'm just going to put out a solution because it's the same thing over and over again. So over here I'm going to put 1 over 3 and then 3 cubed minus 10, 3 minus 9 over 3. So over here 3 to the cube is just 27, and 27 over 3 is just going to end up being 9. And then 10 times 3 is just minus 30, and 9 over 3 is going to end up with 3, so I have minus 3. So now I have negative 24. So I'm going to go ahead and write it next to it, so I have a negative 24. I'm going to try the same thing for 1. So I'm not going to write it out, I'm just going to tell you guys what happens with it. So if I put 1 over here, it's just going to be 1 over 3. And then if I put 1 over here, it's just going to be negative 10. And if I put 1 over here, it's just going to be negative 9. And I ended up with 1 over 3 minus 19. And if I, because this is 1, if I times it by 3, I'm going to end up with 1 minus 57. And then 3 over here. And a 1 minus 57 is basically negative 56 over 3. Now I have negative 56 over 3. And if you guys do the same thing for the others, you're going to get negative 1 being 56 over 3, just a positive version of it, and then negative 3 being 24. And these would be, you don't say x anymore because these are your points, but you can call it 0.1, 0.2, but basically these would be your 4 points as an answer. It asks for us to find the equation of the line that passes through 4 and 0 and perpendicular to the tangent of fx equals root 25 minus x squared at x equals 2. So the different part is we did the horizontal version wants us to find the perpendicular to the tangent. So when I read the question carefully, what I see, it wants us to find the equation of the line. So I already know my end goal is going to be in the form y equals mx plus b. We did this kind of question in part 1 of the video. Once it says that it passes through the point 4 and 0, so I know that I'm going to use that in order to find what my b point is, like we did before in the part 1 question. And it says it's perpendicular to the tangent of fx root 25 minus x squared at x equals 2. So because it gives us the x, I can actually find the slope of the tangent, and from that slope of the tangent it wants us to find whatever the perpendicular is. So whenever it says perpendicular, we use the negative reciprocal of whatever the slope we found, and that would be the perpendicular. I'm going to go ahead and use the same formula, limit as h approaches to 0, where x plus h minus fx. No, I'm not using the a because x is already given, so it's not a plus h, it's x plus h over h. So now I'm gonna go ahead and plug in my x value over here. So now I have limit as 8 approaches to 0, f2 plus h minus f2 over h. So now in order to find whatever my f2 plus h is, I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the original equation. So when I do that, I have limit as 8 approaches to 0, plug in 2 plus h into the equation. So I have root 25 minus x squared, so it's going to be 2 plus h squared minus. So now I'm going to plug in 2 for the original equation again. So it's going to be root 25 minus 2 squared over h. Now I'm going to simplify it even further. So now I have limit as h approaches to 0. And now I have 25 minus 4 plus 2h, and another plus 2h is going to be plus 4h. And then now I'm going to end up with h squared. And then minus 25 minus 4 is going to be 21. And then all over h. I'm going to keep going with it. So now I have limit as h approaches to 0. Root 25 minus 4 is just going to be 21, and then now I'm going to left with plus 4h plus h squared, and then minus root 21 over h. Now I realize that I cannot simplify it even further, but what I can do is I have a radical in the numerator, so I can technically change that into the rational number that I want by using the rules that we learned in 1.1. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Because it's a 2 form, I'm going to use its conjugate. So it's going to be end up being root 21 plus 4h plus h squared plus root 21. Same thing over here. 21 plus 4h plus h squared plus root 21. So now I have limit as h approaches to 0. This times this is just going to come out of the root. So now I have 21 plus 4h plus h squared. So now I'm going to multiply this by this. And if I do that, it's just going to be plus root 21 times that equation. But I realize I have the negative one over here of the same formula, so they're just going to cancel out, so I'm not writing those. And the last portion is going to be negative 21 times plus 21, the root 21, so it's going to come out as negative, and it comes out of the root, so I have 21 left over. So now I have h, because I'm going to cancel out h, I'm not going to bother distributing it, so now I have root 21 plus 4h plus h squared plus root 21. So now here I realize that I can cancel these out because this is positive 21, but this is negative 21, and I realize that I can take out h from here. So I'm going to go ahead and take out the h. So limit as h approaches to 0, I have, if I take h out, I'm left with 4 plus h over h being root 21 plus 4h plus h squared plus root 21. And now I'm going to go ahead and cancel the h's out. So I'm left with limit at h approaches to 0, 4 plus h over root 21 plus 4h plus h squared plus root 21. So now I can go ahead and plug in h over here, and same thing with over here. One thing I probably did not mention is make sure when you plug in h into your equation, your denominator is never 0. that's exactly why we try to cancel h's out over here, so our denominator is not 0, because when your denominator is 0, it's just undefined. That's exactly why we're going through this process. So I realized this is how I know I'm on the right track. When I plug in 0 for this root, even if it's denominator, I have negative root 21 over here, which is a number. So my denominator is not 0. Now I have 4 over root 21 plus root 21. I ended up with 4 over 2 root 21. I can cancel these out, divide 4 by 2, divide 2 by 2. So I ended up with 2 over root 21. Now that I found the slope of the tangent, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the perpendicular to the tangent. So when I said how we're going to find the perpendicular, I said use the negative reciprocal. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So taking the negative reciprocal of this, so when we do that, we're just going to change up the sign. So because this is positive, I'm going to go ahead and say negative, and you just need to flip it. So now I am left with negative 21 over 2. So this is my negative reciprocal, so this will be my slope. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this, because we're trying to find the equation, I'm going to use this as my M point, and I'm going to find B, and that's going to be my equation. Coordinates they gave us was 4 and 0. And when I look at here, I already put up my M over here. So because the coordinates are 4 and 0, I'm going to go ahead and plug them right back in. So my y is 0, and I have negative root 21 over 2, and my x is 4, and then plus b. So now I'm left with, I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2. So I have 2 left over here. So it's 0 equals negative 2 root 21 plus b. And then b will equal positive 2 root 21. So I just put it onto the other side. So now my equation is y equals negative root 21 over 2x plus 2 root 21. The last thing I'm going to cover, I'm not going to solve this question because it's not really a question, but I'm just going to let you guys know if you see this type of question of like what to do, because it's exactly the same things that we did before, it's just one more step. So if you see a problem where it says find the slope of the tangent at fx something, where x is a number, let's say x equals 2 and then x equals 4, so it's giving you 2x points, and you might think, what am I going to do with them? So first thing you're going to do is finding the slope. You can kind of do it like two ways. So one way is going to be using fx plus h minus fx over h. So what you can do, let's say this is 2 and let's say this is 4. You can find the slope for this by plugging in, let's say first 4x equals 2, and then do the slope, finding the slope from that. So you would be saying f2 plus h and then minus f2 over h and solve it from that. And then you can do the same thing for x equals 4, let's say, and do the same thing, 4 plus h minus f4 blah blah blah. Or you can do fa plus h minus fa over h. So once you do that, you're going to end up with the number a, and then once you do, you're going to basically plug in your x values. So you're going to plug in whatever the x2 is to the same slope, and you're going to find it from there, and you're going to plug in x equals, let's say 4 into the a, so you can find the slopes from that. The only different thing is, instead of having one x point, now you have 2 x points. So you can do it both ways, but it's really a simple problem. It's just that I wanted to show you guys, just in case you guys might thinking, what am I going to do with both x positions?